Hi there. I'm Claudia Hofsky from Fed Insider, and on behalf of the George Washington University College of Professional Studies and ServiceNow, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's webinar, Transforming Government Customer Service with New Technologies. Please type your questions and comments into the Q&A pod. If we don't get to them during today's conversation, we'll share them with our speakers so they can follow up with you. Also, take note of the Resources tab on the left side of your screen to download today's slides. We offer live captioning for all of our webinars. To follow along with us today, use the hyperlink under the Live Captioning or CART tab located above the slides. We'll have the full transcript available in the next day or two. And to earn training credit for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all polling questions and stay online for the duration of the conversation. And now, let me turn it over to today's moderator, Jane Norris from Fed Insider. Take it away, Jane.
Thanks very much, Claudia. And hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you today. We have two wonderful guests that are going to talk about one of my favorite topics, transforming government customer service with new technology. So let's give you some ideas, some thoughts, things to work on or think about for your agency. And here's the background. The executive order directing federal agencies to improve customer experiences and service delivery, issued in December 2021, says that government must be held accountable for designing and delivering services with the focus on the actual experience of the people who it's meant to serve, right? Government must also work to deliver services more equitably and effectively. So in September 2023, the Office of Management and Budget issued its memo delivering a digital-first public experience, which provides a policy framework for the next decade of digital modernization across government, and a roadmap for delivering online information and services that meet Americans' expectations. OMB funded these goals in its 2025 budget request, which aims to build a digital-first public experience. The funding is meant to modernize the front-end design of websites and digital services and the accessibility of websites and digital services. The budget proposal makes it clear that AI is central to meeting this directive. So today, we'll discuss some of the many ways that new technologies and innovative thinking can not only streamline customer service, but provide the framework for enhancing and expanding services that today's customers want. So let's meet our esteemed speakers today, shall we? So let me first introduce Akanksha Sharma. Akanksha is the Director of Digital Transformation at the U.S. Department of Labor. It's a pleasure to have you, Akanksha. Please tell us a little bit about your background and what you've been working on at DOL.
Thank you, Jane. Hi, everyone. I'm Akanksha Sharma. I've been with the Department of Labor for a little over 2 years now. I came on board to stand up a new organization called Digital Transformation and to really help the agency focus its customer and user experience efforts along with some of its digital modernization goals. I have had a fairly long career in the federal government, I would say a little bit over 10 years. Initially, when I came over from the private sector, I thought I'd just be spending 2 to 3 years. But frankly, the problems are so interesting to solve in government that I just haven't been able to leave. So I came on board. I was at GSA for a few years working on technology modernization. After that, I moved over to the Office of Personnel Management to work on data transformation and some work related to improving the employee experience. And all of that really built up to my current role. I call this my dream job because it has the perfect synergy of things that really interest me. So data, being data-driven, using that to make our business and customer decisions, and then also customer and user experience. So really taking a human-centered approach to the way that we think about technology and then we think about delivering information. So at Labor, we have quite a few modernization efforts at work. I'll talk about some of those today. Some of the big ones I want to highlight are the work that we're doing to transform unemployment insurance. We've received I believe it may be, there are several projects that we have funded through the Technology Modernization Fund for technology modernization. And then to support the delivering a digital first public experience, we've stood up an entire community of practice to really evaluate and provide recommendations to improve our digital presence and the way
That's
that we
wonderful.
share information.
Well, we can't wait to hear all about that. Thank you very much for that introduction. And let's also meet Kevin Adler. Kevin is Digital Transformation Advisor at ServiceNow. Kevin, please tell us about your work and your background.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jane. Appreciate the opportunity to share insights with you and the folks on the line. I've been focused on government CX for about 20 years and really started at ServiceNow about 6 years ago when we started to evolve from just an IT company to a government customer service centric focused company. And one of the nice things, like Akanksha said, was the challenges are so interesting to solve in the mission space with CX that, the government might not have customers, air quote, but they certainly do have users that they need to support and stakeholders. And that's where the fund starts to help modernizing the way in which governments interact with those stakeholders or mission partners or customers. And it's been a very interesting ride, and the future is very bright in this space.
All right, wonderful. And you've worked mostly in defense for defense clients, is that true?
I started initially just focusing on the DoD sector and currently also support civilians. So I've got some civilian accounts that we help modernize as well as the Department of Defense.
Okay, wonderful. This is fascinating stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad you're here with us. You can see more about their biographies if you go to the resources tab on fedinsider.com, what you're looking at. And also, if you want to ask questions of our guests, please do so there. You'll find a location where you can ask questions and we'll try to work them into the conversation today. So let's start with you, Akanksha. You talked a little bit about the Unemployment Insurance Modernization Project. This has to be a major undertaking for the agency and for you. So can you talk about some of the highlights of the project and how the initiative has improved customer experience for both the workforce, which is an internal customer, and the public?
Yes. So we all remember when COVID happened, there was significant stress put on the unemployment system, which is overseen by the Department of Labor, but really managed at the state level. And so with the American Rescue Plan Act, it gave DOL broad leeway as well as funding to be able to modernize the entire ecosystem, or I should say transform more than modernize, transform the ecosystem so that if another big event happened that would put stress on the unemployment ecosystem, that it would respond better. So this has really been a multi-year journey of exploration to understand how the Department of Labor could shift from more of a enforcer and evaluator to actually a service provider. With there being, every state has their own unemployment system. And that created a lot of challenges because there's vastly different customer experiences as a result of it. There was a lack of standardization around it. So we really took the approach to try to modularize the monolith that is unemployment insurance and start to identify the things that the Department of Labor could provide as a service that would be common across the multiple states, therefore creating some seamlessness and commonality in certain parts of the customer journey.
Would those items be what, identity, management, that kind of thing?
Yes. So identity management is actually one of the areas where we found a lot of state interest because identity management also then goes into ways to prevent fraud. And there's a lot of value there with states being able to share information with each other by providing a common service. We also did slightly more targeted efforts at the state level where we had specific engagements with them through Tiger teams. And this was to really understand their implementation of unemployment insurance and identify opportunities for modernization. We also published some standards and best practices. In fact, there's an initiative going on right now called Open UI, which is a way to basically standardize some of the specifications for what it would take to create a system so that we can have transparency. There were a lot of different ways that we managed this because it was such a large undertaking. I would say from a technology perspective, the national ID verification offering is really the one that's stuck and what we're expanding on right now.
So do they have the ability to pick and choose the capabilities that they want to work with, or is it, an entire system that they adopt and it becomes part of their, offering to their, customers, the people who are filing for unemployment?
We realized pretty early on that we couldn't just take a one-size-fits-all approach. The states are too different in the way that even their policies can be very different. Sometimes their data elements are different. It would just be extremely difficult to give them one big monolithic system and expect them to adopt that. So we really broke it down and we created modular components that they could adopt. It's voluntary, their adoption for it, because ultimately it has to fit within their modernization plan and their priorities. And that's why we really started with providing the ID verification services, because it was a good thing that could be layered on top of their existing systems without having to change every single intricate component. And it's one part of the customer experience that every single American who's applying for unemployment interacts with. So we get a lot of breadth by addressing this one area.
All right, that's really fascinating stuff. Thank you very much. We'll hear a little bit more about that in just a second. Also want to check in with Kevin. Now, Kevin, you've worked largely with the Army, the Department of Defense, and you've, I think, probably implemented quite a few capabilities in different capacities, right? So can you talk to us about how cloud-based solutions and next-gen customer service management systems have helped to improve defense operations?
Absolutely. Great question. And the Army is a good customer to talk about because they've had such success doing it, and they are large. They're very large, the largest on the planet, largest customer on the planet. We have helped them to revolutionize the way in which they deliver service to their soldiers and their families, Jane, who are living around the globe in Army base housing. So whether or not it's Germany or Mississippi or anywhere else on the planet, those family members and soldiers had a really difficult experience when something went wrong with their house. If the plumbing was broken or there was a broken lock or something like that, they had a difficult time collecting, processing, and then managing those requests to fix those issues because there wasn't a centralized system and there was no reporting. So when you can't capture information, you can't act on that information, you can't report out on that information. So we introduced a tool that allows them to do all of that eloquently, focused on the experience of the user, not only the family member or the soldier, but also the Department of Public Works employee who's responsible for supporting that base housing. So it's not just the customer that it benefits, you also benefit the employee when you give them great tools to do their job with. Initially, the Washington Post, the New York Times had front page articles about the Army's failure to support its soldiers living in base housing. So that pressure was something that we helped them to alleviate by modernizing and creating a cloud-based system that would allow the Army to service those users wherever they were and on whatever device they were on. So they didn't need to use their laptop, they could use their mobile device. They didn't need to be on base to go into the DPW office. Jane, it made it as easy for them to request service as it is for you and I at night when we shop online at leading retailers. And so that system has been up and running now operationally for a number of years, and they continue to expand the capabilities to improve on the service to the soldier and their family member.
So having that success, being able to report issues, I guess, through a self-service mechanism, right? Typing into a computer, and then having that resolved, has that led to other ahas for your clients to saying that, okay, if you can do this, then I can do this, maybe, right?
Yeah, we always start on the use case that's most pressing, and then other problems seem to find themselves a solution, taking the confidence and the capabilities that these customers have realized. Oh, if we move the workflow over to a digital tool that allows us to deliver better service, we'll be able to solve more complex problems. And we've got other problems that we're currently solving for the Army in terms of managing their equipment for soldiers, their helmets, their canteens, their jackets, their shirts, their underwear when they come out of boot camp. Delivering a great experience to those is the next area that we're solving for the Army.
Okay, and that's terrific. And do you have metrics that you have put together for some of these projects? It's like 10%, 20% improvement?
Yeah, it's fascinating. When the Army expanded and started using tools to measure work orders, Jane, they were able to take metrics because, again, you've got a system that's able to capture data. Now you can report out against, keystrokes, mouse clicks, data that's the system has access to. And it used to take the Army over a month to solve a problem for a customer, I'll call a family member. Now it takes them under 4 days, so less than a week. And that's tremendous value that the Army is realizing. And what that does is it eliminates the backlog of, we'll get to you in a month. It eliminates that backlog of delays, gives everyone better experiences. DPW shows up correctly because AI can say, well, this is an electrical issue. We need an electrician. This is a plumbing issue. We need a plumber. And then they can also make sure that they arrive at the right scheduled time with the correct tools to solve the problem. And we didn't even know about this small thing that all of us as humans know about. The users, Jane, started to submit photos of the issue. So when they were on their smartphone and they said, here's my broken lock. And they would give DPW a picture. And we all know that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I can say to you, my front door lock is busted. But if I give you a picture of that, you're going to automatically know what I need done. So that also has helped by facilitating the ease of photos. Users can submit information to further help DPW solve the problem, which then solves the challenge of giving good service, a full circle effect.
I love it. All right, that sounds terrific. What a great win for you and for the Army. So, Akanksha, back to you. He mentioned data, Kevin, of course, your favorite thing. So, talk to us about how you integrated and put together an interoperable system between federal and state systems. Is that the way it works? I mean, am I misinterpreting that? Or, did you have to use any special technology in order to make that happen effectively and seamlessly?
We had to take a very creative approach, Jane. We knew based on some research and experimentation we had done that if we try to get involved with every single state unemployment system, that it would not happen because each one of them is slightly different. And it's just so vast that we would not have the time and the resources to be able to produce any kind of shared service across the ecosystem. So after a lot of discovery and conversations with the states, after we decided that we were really going to hone in on the beginning of the funnel, so really helping a customer apply for a claim. That's what we are going to focus on. That's where we're going to try and modernize. We now needed to figure out, okay, how do we plug and play technology so that any person in America can go apply for unemployment regardless of where they live? And this required us to consider digital and non-digital options. We have to keep in mind, not everyone in America is tech savvy. Not everyone in America has access to a laptop or a phone. So we partnered with the United States Postal Service in order to provide in-person ID verification. So a person could just show up to their local USPS, which all of us have a USPS within driving distance, and show their ID, verify their ID, and then be able to apply for unemployment. That was our in-person option. And then for our remote offering, where states were using various different technologies before, we actually partnered with login.gov. the service that's managed out of GSA. So a big part of our mantra was not to recreate the wheel, to use existing services that have been well thought out and available government-wide and then expand them. So we partnered with login.gov, and we now have 19 states total that have onboarded to our remote and or in-person ID proofing options. And we've served just about over 500,000 claimants in the past year, ever since this service started to go live.
That's wonderful. And what you keep talking about fraud, or you have mentioned it in some of your previous comments. Does this also have an impact on, fraudulent payments and, that improper payments kind of thing as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the problem with every state approaching this claim application process differently is that no one was able to share information. No one was really able, a lot of the times when these events happen, they tend to happen across multiple states because they're organized fraudsters that will target multiple states at the same time. And we've actually had several events that have happened in the last year that we were able to catch early and then actually warn the entire ecosystem of states about. Even the ones that are not using the service, we were able to warn them and say, hey, just so you're aware, this is being discussed on the dark web, or just so you're aware, we just saw this particular activity happen in XYZ state, you should look out for it. So not only does providing this kind of a centrally managed service help protect that initial funnel to make sure we have the right checks and balances as claimants come in, but it also creates this environment where you can share information locally and at the federal level to really improve the service and make sure that only the right people who have a legitimate, have the legitimate criteria to get unemployment insurance are the ones that are getting it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what we all want, more efficiency. We want the people who deserve and need the benefits to get them, and not people who are trying to game the system. So that's terrific. And do you keep metrics about what, how much dollar-wise you have saved in order to do this, in doing this?
No, because that's a very difficult thing to do, because it's not like there was ever a baseline for us to measure against, right? There was no kind of centralized service that labor was providing before, and this replaced that. This is completely new. I think, in the next year or two, based on how far we've come this far, we'll be able to create a baseline and say, okay, we think that we have achieved or avoided XYZ in costs or potentially fraudulent payments. But because this space is just so new and nothing really existed to provide that kind of centralized service before, it's hard to have a past to compare against.
I understand. And that would be great to hear if you're able to make those comparisons in the future. Thank you very much, Ashanka. So Kevin, you talked a little bit about the portal that the soldiers are using. Have there been improvements in self-service portals? I mean, sometimes people get stuck. They don't have the right answer. I've gotten stuck.
Right.
And you keep trying to figure out what did I not do?
Make it easier.
How do you improve it, and how do you get customer feedback to improve it the right way?
Sure. Great question. When we look at customers and modernizing their government CX, most agencies have a page or a portal, and oftentimes it's a siloed page. It does one thing: it presents information out. That's it. It doesn't have the 2.0 version of back and forth information or knowledge base that's built in, or other capabilities. I think most customers have a good sense for what a portal is. What modernized portals deliver are the ability to deliver tailored content based on the persona asking the question, which means personalized content. So Jane, when you log in, it's going to be information important and relevant to you. When I log in, or Oksana logs in, it's going to be relevant information to either of us. And it may be an overlap of content, but we might also have personalized content. So that's really what we're seeing as the next frontier, is delivering a personalized experience. Again, going back to that consumer example of when you and I shop at night and looking for either batteries or new blankets, whoever we're shopping with, it's a personalized experience. They know my shipping address. I can look at the last orders I've placed. I can return things all in a personalized experience. So that is a huge transformation to deliver personalized experience to the millions of citizens out there. And then where we see it going is, what if you didn't have to go to the portal, Jane? You said if you're filling out an application and you get stuck, what if you could just, so many of us are familiar with that little live chat icon in the lower right-hand corner, but what if that chat was enabled to engage you and support you where and when you are as the citizen along your journey? So if you get stuck or if you have a question in the middle of a long, belabored process, wouldn't it be cool if you didn't have to stop what you're doing, go off to find the customer help page, and then come back? Wouldn't it be cool if you could just get all of that rich knowledge, support, answers that you need right from that webpage? So the next generation of customer support that we're seeing is to be able to deliver it right where and right when the user needs it on any device, even a mobile device.
Yeah, I think that would be a fantastic development. I have had some experiences. I know the things pop up and say, hey, you didn't do this or you didn't do that. So at least you know where to start.
Yep.
But that sounds like a great development. Kevin, also, I want to ask you, not sure this is your client, but we have an audience question. Does the Veterans Administration use these kinds of tools, customer service tools that you're talking about, or is it strictly military for now?
Oh, good question. So, many federal agencies have access or are using ServiceNow today. And the nice thing is that they can evolve, and the same use cases that we walked through examples with the Army, they can extend this capability beyond IT. And most of our customers have experience, our heritage is supporting IT service management. And most of our customers have investments with ServiceNow using us for IT. These are examples in the mission space where Akshanka made the comment earlier. It's exciting to solve these problems in the mission space. So whether or not the VA is using customer service today from ServiceNow, I don't have insight into that, but they can, because this is just another module of ServiceNow, another workflow that we can solve using the same instance, that SaaS-based instance that you mentioned earlier, or we even have customers on premises, Jane. The workflows can work the same way. And any challenge that federal agencies have, they can extend this into those new areas of the mission.
Thanks very much, Kevin. I do know that the VA has a very experienced and robust customer experience team that are working on issues like this. So let's see if we can find out more information and get that to you. And if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please do. In the resources tab, you find a way to do that. Akanksha, I wanted to go back to you and talk about how the experience has changed for your customers, the states. What did they gain? What are they gaining from the work they're doing with the Department of Labor that they weren't really able to gain on their own through your new UI system?
I think that one of the biggest things that they've gained is likely consistency. In the past, as I had mentioned earlier, labor took a very sort of backseat approach to the way that this entire ecosystem was managed. We gave out the funding and then we sort of just held states accountable. And now by providing a set of technology services, I'll say, well, not even technology services, but just a set of citizen-focused services, whether it's the digital path or non-digital path, we've created consistency in the ecosystem so that we know that an individual applying for unemployment in Missouri is going through the same checks as a person who's applying for unemployment in Texas. And that actually, I think, does a lot, because it starts to standardize the customer experience across the entire country. It allows us to put checks and balances in place. It allows us to make sure that the way that the claims are being handled is equitable across the entire ecosystem, which did not exist before. And on a more tangential level, Department of Labor is paying the first 2 years of the transaction cost. So we've enabled a way for them to adopt new technologies in a way that didn't exist before. And that's a really big win, is for labor to be seen as an enabler and actually advocating for the states getting funding, creating a playbook to make it extremely easy for them to integrate into this environment, rather than having that more third-party sort of perspective that we had taken in the past, especially when it came specifically to providing technology services.
So as you roll this out, I think you told me earlier that 18 states are already on board and there are 2 more that are coming on. So as you roll this out, what is your ultimate vision for the unemployment modernization?
Our goal is to get to, and I think actually now we have 19 states on board, so we just went live with the state last week, but our goal is to have 35 states onboarded by next year. We would like to make sure that all states are onboarded onto this service, and we'd like to then tackle the next piece of the ecosystem that we could provide a shared service in. So right now we really focused on the beginning part of that claim experience, and the vision would be to now go deeper and say, okay, what is that next part of the claim experience, or claimant experience, I should say, that we can standardize and then offer as a service?
Okay. And how do you decide which new feature you'll explore next?
It's a great question. So it's a lot of conversations with states. It's managing a lot of different priorities. We have to try to put a lot of different stakeholders' opinions on the line and figure out what the best path forward is. I think ultimately the next part that we'll tackle will likely be based on the parts of the system that are easiest to take out from the legacy environment. That may be something related to how the claim amount is actually calculated. It could be a rules engine. We could tackle workflow. There's a lot of different options at play here, but ultimately that'll have to be a negotiation with the states to understand what their most pressing need is.
Yeah, that's great. And so once again, reaching back into that customer experience, customer centric kind of modality that you have, and how has the Department of Labor adopted this new functionality? Is there a culture change that's had to take place, or where are you in that journey?
Yeah, actually, there's been a huge culture change because of the fact that it required the DOL to act in an entirely new way, having a customer when we didn't have a customer, or we didn't perhaps see the states as a customer. It required us to have conversations, create permanent pathways to capture feedback. These pathways didn't always exist. And the relationship in some instances could be quite distant, right? Because you have on the one side someone who's enforcing, and on the other side someone who's actually implementing the service and providing anyone who applies their particular benefits. So we had an entirely new office created, the Unemployment Insurance Modernization Office, that my team worked very closely with. And their sole mandate was to help transform the current state, not just in terms of technology, but also culture. And I would say it's been quite successful. This particular offering, particularly now, is a core part of DOL in terms of how we give services to the states. And that was not the case just even 2 years ago.
All right. And we have a question from the audience about, will you require all 50 states to come on board? I think the answer just is no.
No, I don't foresee. I mean, I can't, never say never, right? But I don't foresee us implementing that sort of a mandate, because it's important that states have leeway. They are ultimately responsible for providing these payments, for managing the entire life cycle. We're here to support them. That's really the goal of the Department of Labor. And in order to do that, we want to be flexible. That's why we took this approach to begin with, where we wanted to slice the piece of the technology modernization that could sit on top of their existing technology layer and allow them to make some of those decisions in their own time and at their own pace.
All right, that's great stuff. Thanks very much, Akanksha. Kevin, you talked a little bit about all of the feedback that now soldiers are providing, speeding up services. How does that information get utilized for better decision making and more effective decision making? You know, how's the analytics piece of this fit in?
Yeah, we call it performance analytics. You can see the performance of your workflows, seeing the work throughout the value chain, the beginning to the end. You can actually see where work is not flowing. So the obstacles, the potholes, the roadblocks, you can see where it's humming along beautifully. And you can actually dig into why is it working well here? And what's the challenge over here to prevent it from working well? And you can even have the system holistically show you where you can mine the system for process inefficiencies and have it identify where work can be. Time is really the currency of the day. We only have so many hours in the day. This can help cut off time to solve problems and to speed up work flowing. And that's really the key, is now being able to visualize all of the work in the system and shortening the time it takes to resolve it. That's a huge differentiator for government customers, for any customer looking to speed up performance.
So how do you see data analytics being used in the future? I think we're just really at the tip, because everybody's getting their data, organized, readable, searchable, all of those things that are necessary to use it to work. How do you see government, because it's been a bit of a sticking point, using data in the future to improve services and become more effective?
There's many ways you can skin a cat. You can look at data and see many different things. So whether or not you're looking for a return on investment, the cost savings or the time savings, or the silver tsunami that's happening, all of the retired folks who are going to walk out of the organization and take that tribal knowledge with them when they retire. And how do you empower the younger workforce to come in and take over and manage the workflow? Data will allow that transformation of information to be delivered quicker to the new employee than ever before, through knowledge base, through templates or playbooks, so that process is done consistently. And looking at these KPIs, you'll be able to identify areas that you need to focus on to improve the outcomes.
And do you see predictive analytics for repairs, for instance?
Yeah.
In what other areas do you think it would be? I mean, it's good at counting, right?
Yeah. Well,
so
we're on the cusp of generative AI. And the difference, when I talk to customers, I always like to introduce, we've been using artificial intelligence and machine learning for a number of years, which are wildly helpful. And the difference is that information that is brought into the system can get routed based on the information. That's artificial intelligence, that's machine learning. The difference with generative AI, Jane, is that the system can then make information based upon inputs. And that's going to help additional analytics and performance analytics. So how often do you need to maintain systems, servers, air conditioners, ammunition, or trucks, or oil? All of that information is captured, so you can do predictive intelligence about, well, if your threshold for service is at the 5,000 mile use mark or the 5,000 hour use mark, and you're within that period of time, it's time to take that equipment in and service it. So the future is bright because we've got new technologies to deliver performance analytics outside of just traditional reports that you look at in a spreadsheet and make decisions upon.
Well, I'm really, I see it in my own life, that I get analytics from my bank. Some of mine I'm not so interested in hearing, but where I'm overspending.
Even the refrigerator can tell you, you've got 6 weeks left on your filter. You've got to change the filter. That's huge.
That is huge. You're right about that. All right, I like it. Akanksha, I want to switch to a different area beside the great unemployment project that you're working on. You've also been going through an optimization of your websites at the Department of Labor. I want you to talk a little bit about the user experience, how it's been enhanced, the improvements that you've made, and in what areas did you feel you have made the most improvement?
Yes, thank you, Jane. So, you hit on this earlier, but there is some recent guidance that came out from OMB on how to best deliver a digital first government. Kevin hit on a lot of the points already, right? You want to understand your users, you want to use your data to your benefit, and you want to ultimately allow them to be able to do their task or get the information that they need as quickly as possible. The DOL has 200 websites. We have tens of thousands of pages of content. And as we started to go through the specifics of the memo to try to come up with an approach in terms of how we would address some of the intent of it, for example, deduplicating our content, making sure that we're looking at our search function and allowing American people, for the most part, who are coming to our websites to be able to get to the information quickly. We noticed that the experience is quite disparate at the moment. So I'll give an example. Roughly 50% of the web traffic on dol.gov is around Family Medical and Leave Act. It's one of the most popular topics that Americans are coming to dol.gov about. And as we've started to mapping out the user experience, but then also started to map out our content hierarchy, we're realizing that the same information is available in multiple different spots. The forms are not digitized. There's just sort of a page with all of the forms. It's all written in government jargon. So it's not plain language. It's just a very difficult experience for someone who's probably in a hurry, needs information on FMLA so that they can apply for it at their particular job. So as we've been doing some of this journey mapping, we've started to identify opportunities for deduplication. We've started to identify places where we can take a more persona-based approach to our design for the website. And our goal for this upcoming year is to start to actually redesign the website, redesign the content to be able to provide this information a lot faster than most people are able to get it today.
And do you think that, what parts of the process did you really look at? Navigation, accessibility, overall usability, and how did you then evaluate whether you were getting the desired result?
So, you look at your analytics. So these would be, most agencies are asked to make sure that they are participating in the digital analytics program. So you look at your DAP analytics. We also have some customer experience surveys on our website now. That was a new capability that we brought into the department today, so we could capture some feedback directly from the public. So we look at our CSAT surveys and see what is the American people telling us when they come to our websites. We have 508 scanning tools, so we're able to look at the accessibility of our websites. We are also able to use some tooling to be able to determine how much of our website is in plain language. I will say a common theme you'll hear about as I go through this entire list of things that we looked at is like tooling. Because there's so much content out there, you have to look at ways where a tool can scan your websites and give you some data to act on. It's very challenging to try to do this. I would say impossible to do this otherwise. Besides that, we also looked at our search results to see how are people getting referred to dol.gov. Are they coming to us directly? Are they coming from Google? And then what does their search pattern look like? So we were basically able to create I'll call it a digital scorecard, and it had all these factors in a quadrant. And we were able to then say, okay, you know what, this part of the website really needs a makeover, because we're noticing that on a multiple criteria, we're getting kind of negatives. But that's basically the approach that we took, enabled with a lot of scanning tools.
Okay. Kevin, you're shaking your head. Yes. Did you have any comment?
I love where her head's at. I mean, that's the great leadership to be able to implement that and to change the way government does business, is using persona-based resourcing. All of the things you just said was fantastic. I love that.
Yep. No, I do too. I think it's terrific. Anyone who has gone to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I don't know if that's under your purview, and tried to, get the most recent unemployment statistics can relate to what I'm saying. It can be confusing. All right. So Kevin, back to you. I wanted to ask about how you strategize with your client to make sure that whatever digital transformation, whether it's websites or whether it's typing in service improvements, how do you make sure that they are sustainable and continue to evolve as technology changes? Because technology is changing all the time, and there's new functionality coming on all the time. So how do you do that?
That's a great question. I remember the day when governments would create their own technology, and they would build applications that then no one would be able to sustain because those people who built it retired. I think it's a wonderful advancement for governments to use commercial off-the-shelf software and let the software pros design software, and governments can utilize it as they see fit. With that, one of the advantages of software as a service are the updates that are included with any subscription to licenses. And that will ensure that agencies continue to maintain or leverage partners to maintain the applications which service their users, and eliminate the inability of coders who no longer exist to maintain these government-based systems. So relying on commercial off-the-shelf software is one of them, taking advantages of updates that are part of the subscription. Every couple of months, they have new updates, store releases, those are others, but also helping to keep focused on what they want, their mission, and where their future direction is headed, and how software can digitally transform that experience so they can deliver a digital first experience to their community of users.
And as software is, brought on more and more frequently, are there security concerns that need to be undertaken as well as just functionality?
There are, and fortunately, so many government customers have access to government community clouds, either in the big cloud providers or the SaaS providers, so they can implement these solutions using secure-based software that sits within their security posture, because no government wants to be hacked, right? And they have missions to achieve, but taking a zero trust approach to using software that's already running today in their infrastructure, they can just keep expanding on that software and using the investments that are out there today in these secure clouds, deliver service to citizens, soldiers, their users, stakeholders, mission partners, even other agencies.
Okay. And Akanksha, I saw you shaking your head. Is this security also an issue for maybe the states who are working with you in the unemployment project?
I mean, I wouldn't even so much as call it an issue, as I think it's just become a part of the fabric of how we make technology decisions. Like it has to be baked in. It's foundational. And it's interesting because sometimes, UX, CX, security, sometimes you have to make trade-offs, right? Because you want to make things easily accessible. That's actually a conversation we're having right now. Every time we see a fraud event or happen in the ID verification space, we always say, okay, well, what are the controls we're going to add? Are we going to check against additional attributes on maybe someone's driver's license to make sure this doesn't happen again? And every time we have that conversation, we have to balance it with, okay, but is this going to make it inaccessible? Is there a part of the population who maybe doesn't have access to the same documents, who now wouldn't be able to access the service anymore? But I would say it's become a really core part of just how we make decisions now. And there's this constant back and forth to make sure we're ultimately coming up with a balanced approach where we balance all of these different priorities.
Well, I think that's a first step, right? Everyone is now conscious of it. How you implement it is the issue. So that's great. But Kasia, I also wanted to ask you about the website optimization. So is it mobile friendly? And was that a big priority for you, that you would be able to access maybe on an omni-channel methodology? You could use your cell phone, you can use your computer, you can use another conveyance, a call and to the agency. So is that true? And did you take that into consideration when you were doing the redesign?
It's a huge priority. And the redesign is still underway. So I want to make a distinction here where all of our websites are, responsive on a mobile phone or a tablet, because that's been a part of the guidance for quite some time now. Is it as great of an experience as if you were on your laptop? No. And I think that's really the questions that agencies need to ask themselves. A really good example is if you have a website or an app, whatever digital product, and there's a huge banner, that may look well and good on a laptop, but when you go ahead and open that same thing on your phone, that banner is now taking up 80% of your screen. So as a user, you're now having to scroll. Like it's a completely different experience. And so one of our ethos is like mobile first. There's a lot of research. OMB did this research. I think they said that roughly 70%, a huge majority of the American public is getting their content on their phones. People aren't logging onto laptops anymore. But most websites are designed for a laptop and a screen, not for the phone. So a big part of our improvement strategy is mobile first. We think about the mobile experience at the very beginning to make sure that we're not in the end trying to counterfeit something or fit something into a model that doesn't work. And I'm hoping that as the year progresses and we start to push out our releases with the improvement, American people who are interacting with the website will notice that as well when they go on their phone.
Okay, I think that's wonderful. And I fully agree that it's all going back to your telephone, your cell phone. So that's a really important feature. Thank you for that. And then Kevin, I want to ask, are there other more sophisticated technologies in the works that will streamline operations and improve outcomes? And automation, for instance, how is it being used? And do you have any success stories you can share with us?
Automating, having software speed up the decision process is a great example for how, for instance, the Army can service their soldiers and families with specific problems in their homes, be it electrical, plumbing, roofing, black mold in the basement, any kind of cleanup that's necessary. AI can easily address and assign those workflows to the correct technician. I think what's more exciting, Jane, is the generative AI that's coming and allowing a conversational back and forth between the customer and the software so that the software can do the work on behalf of the customer quicker and more efficiently. We all have experiences calling up our cell phone provider or our cable provider, and it's a miserable experience because the responsiveness of that conversation isn't always clear. Making that much more responsive and natural is where we're going as a culture, and providing that capability to customers for the government to provide that to their customer is in the future.
Yeah, the government has definitely moved into the chatbot world. Do you see that becoming a more robust option for many agencies?
I do, and if you always look to the private sector and what they're doing, it usually dribbles down into what the government sector. It is today a good experience for websites 1.0, websites 2.0, and then the personalized and persona-based support. I think we can always look at whatever works in the private sector is going to be working in the public sector.
That is true, and I think the pressure is on the federal government to match the private sector, and that is, I think, difficult because of all the things that you both have discussed today, and that is accessibility, making sure that every person has the same opportunity, and that sometimes doesn't mean electronic. So keeping those things in mind as well. So we have about 4 minutes left, and I want to give you both an opportunity to wrap up and for a little lightning round. So look into the future. And Akshana, tell me, what's the future of improved CX in government over the next 5 years? And how will technology and user-centered design, agile delivery practices, digital modernization improve public services in the future?
I think that the ultimate vision would be that it is seamless. A citizen's interaction with an app or a digital product within the private sector. So, for example, a banking app or going on an Uber, and your interaction with the government is seamless. It's actually the same thing. It's as easy for you to file your taxes as it is for you to deposit your check on your phone now. And so the amazing place that we could land at is really closing that digital gap and therefore improving the public's trust in government services so that you basically can't even tell that there is a difference between you interacting with your government and you interacting as a private citizen with some app that you've downloaded on your phone. And all of the modern concepts we talk about, using cloud technologies, using software as a service, agile delivery methods, these things help you to fail quickly and fail fast so that we can stop working on 5-7 year projects, hundreds of millions of dollars to realize, well, that idea, that concept we had doesn't work anymore. These modern technologies and modern frameworks allow you to go through that iteration a lot quickly. And I think ultimately that's why we're seeing so many success stories come out, within the defense space, at the Army, within the Department of Labor, because we're really adopting these methodologies and we're able to fail fast, move on to the next thing, and scale what really works.
I love that. That is great philosophy. Thank you very much, Akanksha. I appreciate all your insights today. Kevin, you get the final word. What's the next 5 years for CX in the federal government?
I think the next 5 years will allow the government to move faster because of industry-focused solutions, specifically tailored for public sector entities. No longer will they have to use horizontal solutions that any other large enterprise would use, Jane. Governments are going to be able to take advantage of pre-built workflows specifically for any kind of work that the government needs to do, be it a FOIA request, be it a permitting request, be it a grants management process, and that will be available from large software entities to speed up the way in which they deliver value to their customers.
Well, I think this has been one of the most fascinating conversations I've had in a very long time. I want to thank you both, Kevin Adler, Akanksha Sharma, for your time today, and thank all of you for watching. We really appreciate it. We'd love you to do it some more. So go to fedinsider.com and find another topic that's equally fascinating to this one, if it's possible, and join us again. And now I'll turn things over to Claudia Hosky, publisher of Fed Insider, to wrap things up for us today.
Thanks, Jane, and thank you again to our speakers for sharing your experience with us today. And for our audience, thank you for your participation. Training certificates will be emailed after the webinar ends. And remember to log back in the next day or two if you want to download a copy of our captioning transcript. We have many webinars in the works, as Jane mentioned, so be sure you visit fedinsider.com so you can see what's coming up and register for multiple webinars at the same time. And while you're there, you can check out our podcast, Feds at the Edge. And with that, this is Fed Insider, signing off.